In a move that's surprising to absolutely no one, the media is attacking Star Wars fan over the colossal failure that is the new Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Acolyte. But this time it seems just kind of sad the way they're going about it, because they start attacking the fan base even before the show premiered. They're pretty much just priming their excuses and getting them ready because they know this was just a dumpster fire on their hands. But now that we saw that the show is a failure, not only in the audience score, but also in viewership, the attacks that they have coming at the fans just seem like someone who's just trying to cope with the fact that no one likes what they're having to push out. This article right here talking about it is coming from Collider. Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans. For decades, viewers have been relentlessly attacking Star Wars performers and creators, with the renewed push against TV shows like The Acolyte demonstrating the venom with which a particular set of audience members scrutinize everyone's favorite galaxy. So they're basically admitting here people criticizing Star Wars is nothing new. The only difference between what's been going on in the past and what's been going on now, it seems to be there's more people actually critical over the Star Wars stuff that's being produced in the last couple of years since Disney took over. And that's not necessarily an indictment of the audience. That's more of an indictment of Disney, but let's continue. The vitriol of these persistent voices has subsequently spread throughout the internet, making it feel impossible to say anything positive about Star Wars without turning every discussion into a heated debate. There's not really a debate to be had here. It's pretty much unanimous that people don't like Star Wars, and when people are saying that they do like Star Wars, at least me personally, I've said, fine, you're free to like it. Just understand that you're in the minority on this one, and the majority of the people who actually used to like Star Wars no longer like Star Wars because of what Disney did to it. The unacceptable abuse that Star Wars prequel era actors like Ahmed Best received from fans in the late 90s and early 2000s has been well documented, and since then, negative Star Wars voices have only been amplified by mainstream spout of social media. Okay, first of all, it wasn't fan backlash back then that really upset Ahmed Best. It was the media backlash, because social media wasn't a thing back then. Yeah, there were some message boards, but fans having a voice really wasn't much of a thing back then, because I'm old enough to remember. I do remember it was the media upset with Ahmed Best because they thought his portrayal of Jar Jar Binks was a racist stereotype, and they were attacking him as a result of all that. And that's what he didn't like. So all this talk about how it was fan backlash, that's just historical revisionism, because it didn't happen. Even in Ahmed Best's own words, he says it was media backlash that really upset him. Like, just take a listen to this clip right here.
The reason why I almost ended my life on the Brooklyn Bridge was because 20 years ago, I played Jar Jar Binks in Star Wars. I faced a media backlash that really made me feel like my life was over.
You can see Ahmed Best is still blaming the media for the backlash that he got, and in the quarter century since The Phantom Menace was released, he's never blamed the fans for the pushback. It's always been attacking the media because of what they did to him, and they're trying to act like they're the paragons of virtue, defending him against racist fans and all that other stuff, but that's just not the case. They're basically just doing the exact same thing they've always done, which is attack people. The only difference now is because of social media and other stuff like that, people can actually push back against all the garbage that the media spews. So let's look at some more of this garbage that they have. Leslie Headland's groundbreaking series has been relentlessly review bombed online, causing The Acolyte to possess a huge disparity between its positive critical reception and abysmal audience score on aggregate websites like Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, audiences and critics disagreeing isn't anything new. The only time you hear about word of review bombing is when it's something like this, where it's a movie that has a lot of money behind it, a big studio with a lot of tentacles and media outlets. Then you'll hear about review bombing because, you know, the studio can call in their favors with their allies like Collider and other things like that. But when you think about it, it just doesn't make sense, because the accusation is always like, oh, it's review bomb, that's why it has a 14%. Never mind the fact that other Star Wars properties, even Disney Star Wars properties like Rogue One, for instance, was well received. Audiences and critics both like that one, but you don't hear about that being review bombed or anything like that, or you don't hear about sexist Star Wars fans. Then the only time you hear about those accusations is when it comes to shows like this, where there's a lot of other problems, but they seem to always find like maybe some random people making like some trolly remarks online and make it seem like that's the only criticism, but that's not necessarily the case. And also, if this was the case of people just being racist and sexist and all around just some type of bigot, then it doesn't explain why shows like House of the Dragon is also doing well. I mean, that's coming out around the same time. They have strong female characters. They have some race swaps from the original novel, but people seem to like this show and it's getting well with audiences and critics. And that's because this is a show that's actually well written, that's interesting, and people enjoy it. You can't say that about The Acolyte, which is why that one's just such a colossal failure. Since the majority of these hate-filled criticisms are either overreactions to alleged continuity errors within the Star Wars universe or backlash aimed at attacking the show's long overdue inclusivity, the bad actors spreading them are clearly spinning in controversy out of nothing, and this manufactured outrage can be traced back to the demographics of the original trilogy. And that pretty much says it all, and it's what I've maintained when it comes to Disney Star Wars fans, is there are people who don't actually like Star Wars. That's why they're saying it needs long overdue inclusivity and other things like that. No one's complained about the inclusivity in Star Wars until Disney took it over and they're using these various groups of people as a shield. So if you belong to one of these groups and you're defending Star Wars, that's all you are to them, is just a shield against any legitimate criticism. Because if the show is well received or the movie is well received, then you never hear about people complaining about the diversity. Like just going back to Rogue One again, because that's a good example. It stars a strong female character and it has a diverse cast, but most of the people who are fans of Lucas Star Wars will still admit, like, yeah, Rogue One was a decent movie. Even if it's not a great movie, they would still probably say that's the best thing that Disney Star Wars has done. And they have all reason to say that that's the worst thing Disney Star Wars related. But that just goes to show that it's not the inclusivity that people care about. No one cares about strong female characters or a diverse cast if it's done well. The only problem is when you're making that the forefront of your show, then the writing and quality of the storytelling comes second. And that's what people are normally complaining about. If you actually listen to the criticism from the fans, you will see that that's what people don't like when it comes to shows like The Acolyte, is just the acting's poor, the writing's poor. For some reason, it looks a lot cheaper than what the budget would suggest it looks like. And unless they're actually going to do something to fix that, well, then we're just going to continue to see failures like this. And having media allies to Disney coming out and attacking the fans isn't going to help them anyway, too, because what's this supposed to do? People are going to be like, I don't like The Acolyte, but Collider called those fans hateful and bigoted or whatever, so now I'm going to have to watch the show. No, if anything, it's just going to get people to dig in their heels more and be like, well, if that's the people defending it, then I'm definitely not going to watch Star Wars. I've said in the past, and I'll say it again, Disney is trying to create a new fan base for Star Wars because they can't capture the old Star Wars fan base. I think they initially tried, but they saw that it actually takes some effort to appease those fans. So they want people who will just sit underneath them, open their mouth, and just consume whatever they have to spew out. So if that's the new fan base they're trying to cultivate, well, then they have to excise the old fan base. And I think a show like The Acolyte is definitely trying to do that right now, because they're really leaning into a lot of the identity politics stuff and the bad writing and all the other things that longtime Star Wars fans don't like to have shoehorned into their project. So I think Disney is trying to get rid of those old fan base so that they can start fresh with a new Star Wars fan base. But if that's what they're going to do, then they really need to reduce the budgets on their future projects, because with the way things are going, they can't sustain themselves very long. Pretty much they haven't been profitable since they've acquired Star Wars, despite the few successes that they've had early on. And if they continue down this path, they're just losing money with each subsequent project. So I can't really see them continuing on this way unless they make some major changes over at Lucasfilm and actually try to listen to the fan base instead of just saying you're just a bunch of bigots. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Do you think there's any possibility that Lucasfilm can be saved and Star Wars can be saved, or do you think it's just kind of dead at this point? And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share the video with your friends, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.